So you might remember that at the beginning of June, I said that we were entering the Gospel of Mark. And I said that we would stay in Mark all the way until Advent. Well, that's true, and also not entirely true, because in this year of the lectionary, year B, at this very moment, we jump out of Mark for 5 weeks. 5 weeks that are dreaded by preachers everywhere, because these 5 weeks are all John chapter 6. 5 weeks, all just the chapter 6 in John, and every week is about bread, week after week after week. We shall see how many weeks of John 6 I can get through before I give up and just choose something else. I'm aiming for 4, but we'll see. But our 5 weeks of John chapter 6 begin today with the feeding of the 5,000. Now, I'm guessing we've all heard this story, right? We may have heard it a lot. It comes around in the lectionary quite a bit, in part because the feeding of the 5,000 is found in all 4 Gospels. In fact, it's the only miracle that is in all 4 Gospels. And there is so much to think about in this story. With this passage, we might dig into themes of abundance and scarcity, of poverty and hunger, of sustenance and spiritual food, of God's presence changing what's possible, of community and responsibility, or even a critique of the empire and capitalism. There is so much here. This is a foundational story for us as Christians. It's ordinary people receiving enough. And John's version of this story is different. This is not Matthew's feeding of the 5,000. Jesus doesn't act out of compassion for the crowd, although it doesn't say that. Instead, this story in John tells us Jesus does this as a test. Where are we going to buy bread for all of them? Jesus asks, knowing full well how he's going to feed everybody. Philip replies, we can't possibly afford to feed all these people. We can't possibly buy enough. It can't be done. And then Andrew pipes up, there's a boy over here with 5 loaves and 2 fish, but what are they among so many people? What are they among so many people? Or as other translations put it, but that's a drop in the bucket for a crowd like this. Or, but that's practically useless in feeding a crowd this large. What difference will it make? Indeed, what are 5 loaves to 5,000 people? It's absurd to think about. It's like the vendors at Fenway Park having just 5 hot dogs for everybody in the stands. It's like the Lazarus House food pantry having just 5 cans of soup for the whole week for everyone. It just doesn't work. The math doesn't happen. The logic isn't there. That's just reality, plain and simple. 5 loaves can't feed 5,000 people. And yet, Jesus gave the 5 loaves and the 2 fish to 5,000 people, and they got as much as they wanted, and they were satisfied, and they gathered up the leftovers. Now, you may have heard of biblical scholars or preachers doing mental gymnastics to explain how this event literally happened. You know, oh, people shared the food they had brought in their picnic baskets, or, oh, there was actually much more food than described, or, oh, each person only took a crumb of bread. To me, it's not that these explanations are absurd, it's that seeking an explanation is absurd. The story doesn't need an explanation to make it literally true. It needs our imagination. It needs our faith. Just like many stories in the Bible, this one isn't reporting facts, it's trying to expand our hearts. This story reminds us that what seems impossible may actually be possible with the presence of Jesus. That what appears irrational is actually miraculous in the presence of God. That our logical minds cannot contain God's realm. That as God's people, we are called to operate not by the math of the empire, but by the calculus of God, who says that even with 5 loaves and 2 fish, there can be enough for everyone. Enough for everyone. Without payment or anxiety or coercion or blame or scapegoating or withholding. Think of the difficulty that our society has in giving enough for everyone. Think of how we divide ourselves into those who deserve and those who don't. There wasn't enough bread for 5,000 people. And yet there was. A December article from Bloomberg News reported that according to the United Nations World Food Program, by the end of 2020, 270 million people could be living in famine conditions. That's up from an already staggering 149 million before COVID. Add in the disruptive effects of climate change and our planet's ever-increasing population, and we're looking at difficult times ahead, said the article. 821 million people in the world are chronically undernourished. And yet, says Bloomberg, we could feed the population of 2 Earths without clearing a single new acre of land. According to the organization Food First, the world already produces more than 1.5 times enough food to feed everyone on the planet. Hunger is caused by poverty and inequality, not scarcity. Not scarcity. There was enough for everyone. There is enough for everyone. So what can we do in the face of enormous local and global challenges, including hunger, but so much more? What's the role of West Parish in the face of climate change, addiction, racism, poverty, anti-Semitism, vaccine misinformation, and so on? We don't have enough, we might say. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough time. What are our few hands and voices in the face of so much need, so many big problems? What are 5 loaves and 2 fish among so many people? What difference would it make? And yet, it is enough. There is enough with the presence of God and with our faith. May this story help us to expand our imaginations of what is possible and what we can do together. Amen.